For almost 80 years, tanker aircraft have been the backbone of the United States Air Force. Their ability to extend the range of other aircraft indefinitely by refueling them in the sky has resulted in an entirely new dimension of military capability. Over the years, these tanker aircraft have come in several different forms, one of the most iconic being the KC-135 Stratotanker, which alone has provided aerial refueling support to the Air Force for over 60 years. And while the KC-135 is still flying today, the fleet is quickly aging, and the need for a new tanker to propel the aerial refueling mission into the next generation is becoming more and more prevalent. So what is the Air Force's answer? Well, it's this aircraft right here, the Boeing KC-46 Pegasus. Based on the design of the Boeing 767 and featuring the advanced flight deck avionics of the Boeing 787, the KC-46 is a fascinating airplane. So much so that I wanted to come out and see this aircraft in person, and more importantly, show you why the KC-46 Pegasus is a whole lot more than just a tanker. Welcome to Wichita, Kansas, home of the 22nd Air Refueling Wing here at McConnell Air Force Base. Since the early 1970s, the tanker mission has been synonymous with McConnell, and for me personally, this base has some deep family ties. This is where I was born. For those of you who watched my KC-135 video, you'll know that my dad was a tanker pilot in the Air Force, and in the late 1990s, he was stationed right here at McConnell as part of the 344th Air Refueling Squadron. This is the first time I've been back since we left when I was 2 years old, and while I don't remember too much, I do know that my parents loved their time here and had nothing but amazing things to say. Today, we'll have the chance to learn all about the Pegasus from both the pilots and the boom operators before joining them on board for a flight to experience firsthand what air-to-air refueling looks like on the KC-46. So the first thing I want to talk about is the KC-46's design. If you're someone who follows aviation, you'll probably recognize that the main body or fuselage of the aircraft is derived from the Boeing 767. However, the flight deck actually shares similar avionics to the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Mounted under each wing are the two engines, powered by Pratt & Whitney. They're military variants of the PW4000s used on aircraft like the 747, 767, and 777, and give the KC-46 roughly 62,000 pounds of thrust and a range of over 6,300 miles. Now the fuselage, the avionics, the engines, those are all features that make this airplane an airplane. But the KC-46 is so much more than just your typical aircraft. It was designed to be a multi-role tanker and transport aircraft, meaning in addition to refueling other aircraft in the sky, it's also capable of transporting cargo, passengers, and medical patients all over the world. But at its core, the KC-46 is a tanker, and the technology it uses to refuel other aircraft in the sky is completely different than any other aircraft in history. Now, you've probably seen the photos from traditional tanker aircraft like the KC-135 and KC-10 that refuel by having a person lie down in the rear of the aircraft known as the boom pod, looking out of a physical window to control the large metal boom that transfers fuel to the receiver aircraft. As someone who has had the opportunity to ride in the boom pod of both the 135 and the KC-10, I'll be honest, it's one of the coolest views in the world, especially looking out at the receiver aircraft just a few feet in front of you. Well, with the introduction of the KC-46, the boom pod was moved to the front of the aircraft, in an area known as the Air Refueling Operations Station. Instead of using a physical window that a boom operator can look out of, the KC-46 uses a series of cameras positioned on the bottom of the aircraft that displays a real-time 185-degree panoramic view of the receiver aircraft on these 3D screens, in what Boeing refers to as the Remote Vision System, or RVS. Like with any new technology, there have definitely been some quirks, mostly with the way the camera system displays the receiver aircraft in various weather and lighting conditions. However, after extensive testing and back and forth between the Air Force and Boeing, a mutually agreed upon solution known as the Remote Vision System 2.0 is currently in the works, which will provide upgraded 4K ultra-high definition cameras to give boom operators a full-color, sharp 3D image as they guide the refueling boom into the receiver aircraft.
Alright, so this is the aerial refueling operator station. The first thing you'll notice is that there's two seats. The two seats are for if there's a student and an instructor, or it adds to the redundancy of this aircraft. In case there's a fault on one side of the aircraft, we have the ability to move to the second seat as alternative. This screen right here is mostly for receiver information. But the panoramic screens, it is for just situational awareness mainly. And the main screen right in front of you, that's actually the only 3D screen at this station. The two things that actually deploys the boom is the press of two buttons to power it on and to actually deploy it, which is this button right here. The joystick on your left is for extension. If the receiver is a little bit far out, I can extend and make a contact that way. Also, I can control gas with the button in the middle that says fuel off. The joystick on the right, that's what I use to actually move around up and down to, make contact with the receiver.
Now, I also know you guys have these really cool 3D glasses, right, that you wear.
Yes.
Can you explain what that's all about?
So the 3D glasses is what we use to conduct aerial refueling. It aids in depth perception, so it's not just a one-dimensional screen.
I think they're pretty stylish. What would you say?
Yes, they are definitely pretty stylish. Yeah.
I guess we can let the viewers decide if they pick one of these up.
Here is what makes us special. Here's the boom, and the boom is 78 feet right now, but it can extend up to 21 feet. And the extension just helps with making contact with the receivers. If he's a little bit too far aft, I can extend and reach out and get him. And towards the end of the boom, we have ruddervators. The ruddervators aids in moving the boom around, helping fly the boom. We also have centerline drogue capability. So earlier we went through the screens that aids in aerial refueling at the aero station. The cameras mounted at the bottom of the jet that you see here is what aids in the 3D system and the RVS, the remote vision system, that gives us the essay that we need to conduct aerial refueling.
So I see the three cameras. That makes
Yes.
sense how it kind of gives you that panoramic view.
Yes.
But what about this yellow line here? What's kind of the point of that?
The yellow line here is just to help receivers stay in center line to aid in aerial refueling.
Because that's a big part of it, right? It's making sure they're lined up properly. And as the boom operator, you're walking them through that. You guys have director lights, right? You were mentioning that earlier. Are those kind of on the bottom of the aircraft or where?
Yes, the director lights are also a little bit more forward of the aircraft. There's a forward, down, left, and right, and it helps the receivers get in perfect position for aerial refueling. And of course, as mentioned before, if they're a little bit far back, a little bit far forward, I can adjust my telescope and contact them, provide the gas that they need.
So the question you might be wondering is why? Why transition to a remote vision system and go away from something proven to be reliable, like a boom pod with a physical window? Well, the answer seems to be that the world is rapidly changing, and the future of aerial refueling is almost certain to one day be autonomous and unmanned. The Air Force has put a huge emphasis on drones, and as a result, Boeing has already been testing these autonomous refueling aircraft on platforms like the MQ-25 Stingray. The KC-46's remote vision system may be the first of its kind, but it's also a transition, a stepping stone that will ultimately lay the groundwork for autonomous refueling down the line. And getting that system in place now, figuring out all of the quirks sooner rather than later, should in theory help make that transition to full autonomy quite a bit easier down the road.
Welcome to the flight deck of the KC-46. What really separates the KC-46 from legacy tankers like the 135 or the KC-10 is going to be just the modern avionics and the modern systems incorporated into the jet. So right here we have our glass cockpit displays, which really brings kind of modern avionics into the KC-46 and allows us to shoot a lot of different types of approaches, from GPS approaches to kind of more traditional, and also more advanced approaches like category 2 and 3 instrument landing systems, which allows us to get down to like 600 feet visibility, which if you're driving on the highway, think like the foggiest day that you've driven, like landing in those conditions. So it's a very capable instrument aircraft.
So is that different than the normal 7.6 or even the 7.8, or is it the same?
It's practically the same.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha.
So we have
for tankers, that's a lot different than
for tankers. It's a lot different. For Air Force aircraft, it's a capability that not a whole lot of aircraft have.
Sure.
Especially like HUD-less aircraft.
Yeah.
So the C-17 can probably shoot and approach that low, but a lot of other heavies like the 135 don't have that capability.
Okay. So I want to ask you about range, because I read that the max range on this aircraft is about 16 hours. However, the KC-46 can actually take fuel from another tanker, right?
Yeah.
So does that mean this can stay airborne indefinitely?
Yeah, effectively, right? All the way up until like a physical failure, right?
Yeah.
But I've flown a max endurance sortie, and that's something that we're kind of pushing to do. Typically unfueled, yeah, about 16 hours with a normal max fuel load. And then, like you said, we can do AR multiple times throughout the sortie and fly as long as we want, which is a huge capability.
So max endurance, how long was that flight?
So I flew on a 35-hour flight.
35 hours.
Yeah, brought a lot of snacks.
Must be kind of a dream airplane to fly too.
It really is, yeah. It's super comfortable, and just like me and you are talking right now, this is what it sounds like while you're flying, as opposed to, you know, having to have hearing protection and stuff like that throughout the cockpit. It really is a super comfortable airplane to fly. All right, so just behind the flight deck, we've got next to our aero station where the boom operators sit, we've got our lav.
And it's
right?
nice too,
Yeah.
wow.
Just like you'd see in an airliner, right?
A little different than the 135.
Just a little bit different. And then back here, we've got kind of our crew seating, right? So we got 4 seats on this side, 4 seats on that side for a total of 8. People that would sit up here are additional crew members or flight chiefs. Some crew chiefs that we take with us on different trips when we go off station. Real nice, comfortable as far as the cabin goes, a lot of space. Less space as we get into the galley. Up here, we've got our 2 fridges packed with plenty of refreshments and snacks for our trip. We've got our coffee pot and hot water dispenser, and then also our little oven, which, depending on how the culinary skills of the people on board, you can get some very creative ideas, all the way from cookies all the way up. I've seen people make like full steak dinners and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Is it up to you guys to make your own food?
The boom operators are typically the high-end,
the
chefs.
culinary specialists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Typically I'll stick to like Hot Pockets and something that I can quickly run back and make sure I don't like burn the plane down. I
understand.
Here are the rest of the seats, and then as we come back here, we kind of open up into our crew bunks.
Oh wow!
So we've got 3 different crew bunks, just top to bottom, that can fold down. Far back from where the boom operator and the flight deck is, it's a lot more quiet back here, and we can kind of turn the lights off. It's actually like a fairly comfortable place to sleep for some of our long flights. All right, so we're gonna head back to the main cargo compartment now.
Beautiful.
And back here is kind of where the multi-role capability of the 46 really kicks in, right? You have the boom operator who also does the air refueling aspect, but back here is also where they kind of act as a load master, loading passengers, cargo, aeromedical evacuation. We can hold up to 18 pallet positions, around 65,000 pounds of cargo, 58 passengers on a normal day, up to 114. Typically when we'll carry passengers, we can also load in a pallet that is additional bathrooms, additional ovens, a lot more refrigerator space. Typically, we'll carry our own stuff in and out, right? So one jet can carry all of our passengers, and the other jet, all of our cargo. We don't really need a huge footprint other than ourselves to kind of get into and out of theater, which is a real multiplier when it comes to just the assets that are spread across the world. You can kind of feel how comfortable it is for the aeromedical evacuation, right? They have a lot of room out here to do kind of their life-saving efforts as we transition, our long distances. A little bit more noisy when we're in flight back here, but it's a comfortable level that you don't, again, need like hearing protection or, it's not super cold, super harsh environment back here throughout the flight.
Yeah, I mean, it literally has that new car smell almost to it, right?
Yeah,
exactly. I think people in the comments are gonna laugh, especially old Air Force veterans. You've got a nice bathroom, you've got ovens, you've got bunks.
Yep.
Kind of living up to the Air Force stereotype, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much an Air Force airplane, right?
Yeah.
All stereotypes included, but it's comfortable, it's very effective at what it does, and kind of integrating into that tactical battle space, as well as that multi-role capability, which is kind of what the bread and butter of the KC-46 is.
Now I want to take a second to thank the sponsor of today's video, Boeing. Boeing has been manufacturing aerial refueling tankers dating back to the 1940s with the introduction of the KB-29, which was a modified B-29 bomber. Then came the KC-47 Stratofreighter, the world's first production tanker, which the Air Force flew until the late 1970s while transitioning to the iconic KC-135, which is still flying today. However, with the introduction of the KC-46, the aerial refueling capabilities have increased drastically. The KC-46A can carry more fuel, 3 times the number of cargo pallets, 2 times the number of passengers, and 30% more medical evacuation patients than compared to the legacy KC-135, really showing that this aircraft is a whole lot more than just a tanker. The multi-mission aerial refueler is also equipped with a full suite of countermeasures, protecting it from nuclear, chemical, and biological attacks, including a hardened flight deck armor that adds another layer of protection. Additionally, the Pegasus offers more secure communications and more data integration than any other tanker, giving the crew and fleet situational awareness for real-time decision-making. By delivering data as well as fuel to the Joint Force, the KC-46A is transforming the role of the tanker for the 21st century and will continue to expand its capabilities as Boeing continues to invest in next-generation aerial refueling advancements. To this day, the KC-46 has offloaded more than 200 million pounds of fuel to receiver aircraft all across the globe, with hundreds and hundreds of flights continuing to be flown every single month. So at this point, what we've got next is the opportunity to join the crew on board the KC-46 and witness our very own aerial refueling flight. And I'm definitely excited because I've had the chance to fly on the KC-135, I've flown on the KC-10, but this will be my very first time flying on the Pegasus. And I'm interested to see how the aerial refueling process differs. Right now, the crew is inside finishing their final pre-flight brief before they step out to the aircraft. Then it's time to load up, take off, let's get it. All right, so I'm here with our aircraft commander, Major Ollie Slidenko, and our co-pilot, Captain Victor Kyle. Now, Major Slidenko, why don't you sort of set the scene for what we can expect on our flight today?
So today is some tanker and receiver air refueling. So right now we're going to be playing the role of the receiver, and they're going to be playing the role of the tanker. Victor here is going to close us in to get within about 50 feet of the tanker, and then from then on I will take the aircraft and I'll attempt a contact. At 15:30 Zulu, so about exactly an hour from now, we have to leave this MOA and we'll have to proceed to an air refueling track to refuel an actual external receiver. In this case, we're training with the B-2 bomber.
So I wanted to ask you about the typical missions you fly. How long are the missions? What's the longest you've been up in this thing? And is it a little more comfortable, this being like a newer aircraft for the crew?
Longest sortie I've ever flown in this jet was just a little bit over 24 hours. We literally just flew around the perimeter of the United States. It is unbelievably comfortable. It's like going from a Model T to a Tesla is how I like to describe it. It's just bigger, wider. As you saw in the back, the seats in the back practically like a business class in a commercial airliner. So when you are in those endurance sorties and you do need to kind of swap out and take rest, you can. You can get adequate rest in this aircraft.
So what's it like having two planes flying hundreds of miles per hour, literally physically touching each other? Like from a pilot's perspective, what's that like?
It is terrifying. The previous airplane that I flew was an E3. We did not do formation flying in the E3. And so for me, the learning curve was very steep and it was very challenging to get outside of my comfort zone and to just trust myself, trust my piloting to be that close to another airplane.
One thing I've always loved is that in the Air Force, the gas station comes to you. And at this point during the flight, we're about to link up with another KC-46 to experience what it's like to get gas as an aircraft that can also give gas. It's a pretty cool feature that essentially allows this aircraft to remain airborne indefinitely. Well, as long as there's another KC-46 in the area to link up with. So I just sat down at the air refueling operator station. Now, the one thing we were told is that we're not allowed to film the physical screens while in flight. So that's why we're kind of doing the side angles here. But what I'm gonna do is tell you what I'm looking at. And we got Nat here to also explain what we're looking at as well. So these glasses are kind of like three-dimensional, right? So when you put them on, it's literally like you're watching a 3D movie, and the aircraft in front of us kind of gives you that depth perception, so the boom operator is able to like easily kind of navigate the boom and make contact. Now, apparently, Nat, the plan is we're gonna get some B-2 stealth bombers, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. We got one B-2 coming to us here in a little bit.
Got one B-2. I mean, that's just gonna be incredible. Is there a specific type of aircraft that you say is harder to refuel in the KC-46 or easier, or what's your favorite, would you say?
The B-2 is definitely one of my favorites. I like refueling fighters. I think just watching them move around, it's like a sports car in the sky. They move really quick. They can do a lot of cool stuff. It's pretty fun. I don't know if there's any hard receivers necessarily. It kind of depends on the receiver pilot. If they're stable, pretty much any receiver is pretty easy to do.
All right, so right now we've got the B-2 stealth bombers. They're coming in, so we're gonna throw these glasses on here and just kind of walk us through what you're looking for.
They're coming in here. We see that they got good closure, they're stable. Once they get to that 50 foot, that astern position, I'm gonna go ahead and give them a forward light here with my left thumb and then move them into position to make a contact.
Does it ever get old? I mean, it just looks incredible, right? Like the iconic B-2, and it's just like...
Yeah, not necessarily old. It does get repetitive certain times doing the same training flights, but something like a B-2, that's something that's always really cool to see.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10, back 4, contact. 2-3, you're cleared off high and to the right. See ya!
So first impressions, post-flight, having the opportunity to witness an aerial refueling aboard the KC-46 Pegasus, it's definitely impressive. Now, I'll be honest, I do miss having the opportunity to go down into the physical boom pod and look out the window and see the receiver aircraft up close and in person. But I also understand the advantages of having a modern system like this. What's most important is having an aircraft that can hold and offload more fuel, stay airborne longer, and accommodate the crew on their long missions as best as possible. And that's what the KC-46 was designed to do. Now, I want to give a huge shout out to McConnell Air Force Base for giving us the opportunity to come out here and learn more about this jet. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss out on any future videos. And I'll catch you in the next one.